Welcome to Club E. Hi, I'm Rick Brimacombe of Brimacombe and Associates. I am your architect of business growth, and I will work with you to unlock your potential and amplify the scale of your company. Today, we're talking about angel investing. Before we get to our session, I want to thank our sponsors. Irish Titan is an e-commerce and web development firm. Boulay Group, CPAs and advisors. Highland Bank, a locally owned community bank. Romaine Berg, a digital marketing agency. Voyager U, providing training resources and a community for you to launch an independent career. And you can learn more about Voyager U in the courses section of Club E. And then Projection Smart, startup and growth software for making projections and financial decisions. That can also be learned more about in the tools section of clube.com. Last but not least, the Network Connect, a catalytic gateway for growing your company. Before we get started, please hit the subscribe button. Just takes a moment, right down by the video. I'll wait for you. Also hit the like button, subscribe and like. It will help us deliver better content to you, our wonderful audience, as well as let you know when we are going live. And don't forget, you can catch our Club E sessions on your favorite podcast platform, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, and many others. So you can also catch us and your favorite podcast platform. All right, I want to introduce today's guest, Faz Bashi. Welcome, Faz.
Thank you, Rick. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, and we're talking before, Faz and I had a relatively short call scheduled about a month ago or so, and we filled up the time plus about 2 or 3 times. So I'm really looking forward to our talk today. Faz, tell us a little bit about yourself and the various things that you're up to.
Thank you, Rick. I'm based in San Francisco, so the other coast. So I'm on the West Coast, and my background's in medicine. I'm a physician, scientist, microbiology, immunology, virology, and I'm an investor. So for the past 10 years, been an angel investor with Life Science Angels. I'm also involved with venture capital, focusing on women's health and wellness, medical devices, biotech, pharma, digital health, and most recently, animal health.
And Faz, I would go through each one of these things, but there's like 7 or 8, and that would take us too long. You hit on some of them.
Yeah.
How in the world did you end up with all these different things on your plate?
Right? That's what I wondered too. So my passion is healthcare and life sciences. And the other part of that is I am absolutely enamored by entrepreneurs who work tirelessly to bring innovations to the marketplace, as are you. And I know your background as well. This is what we all love to do, is to see people take their ideas and bring it to the marketplace, build businesses with revenue, and then grow them to a point where they either continue or they find a nice liquidation pathway to an exit. So I find time because I really, truly enjoy what I do. So you asked me earlier also about what is it that really classifies what I do. I consider myself an investor, first and foremost, these days, with a science background. But I also spend an extraordinary amount of time teaching, and not in the formal sense that I'm a professor of any sort, but most of my time is spent trying to demystify the things that you and I do on a daily basis as investors, and also demystify the pathway to entrepreneurship.
Demystify is a great word. I was going to ask if you dug in just a little bit, because when we originally met, it was through or about angel investing. Maybe just give a little bit of extra background on the Angel Capital Association and Life Science Angels.
Yeah, thank you for that. And actually, that is one of the draws that you and I have with one another. Is most angel groups in the United States and Canada belong to a nonprofit trade and policy organization known as the Angel Capital Association. And what we do there is really build the framework for education, for collaboration, and also for facilitating with our Congress conversations about what it means to be an entrepreneur in the United States and an investor, and how does policy then promote the things that we do. And believe it or not, Rick, I'm sure you appreciate this very well. We're falling behind the rest of the world in terms of creating startups and financing them and getting them to a growth stage. So we need to do a lot more to encourage that. And Angel Capital Association provides a lot of those resources.
Let's circle back to that issue about falling behind after we dig in a little bit. Let's start kind of at a high level. Tell us a little bit about your overall thoughts on entrepreneurship and how that's changed over the course of your career.
So my career started off as an academic egghead. I wanted to be an academic physician and an academic scientist. And it took a number of years to kind of whack that out of me, but the scientific method remains in my mind, and I apply it to my investing world. But for entrepreneurship, what I've seen, at least over the past 10 years, is there are so many amazing people out there trying to do incredible things to truly change the world, to change a given dogma or a paradigm that's in business, and it needs to be disrupted. Whether it's on the West Coast or the East Coast or the Mid Coast or any place, entrepreneurs are the most incredible people on the planet. There's a mindset. There's a mindset that you have to wake up every morning. Is it snowing where you are right now, Rick?
Just a
to get
little bit.
to get up in winter and put on the coat, go to the office, and go hack away at the computer or work in the laboratory. There's something about the amazing tenacity, the grit of entrepreneurs. Now, on the other side of it is all of the hype, for lack of a better word, all of the storytelling. I call it revisionist history, that a lot of entrepreneurs do when they talk about how they did it by themselves. That's furthest from the truth. Every success that you see out there, every one of them had a helping hand, and a lot of people behind the scenes who open doors. Those are called advisors, they're called investors, they're called board members. These are people who truly care and want to make sure that the entrepreneur has opportunities. So there is an entire network of people all across the country who are working tirelessly to make sure those doors stay open for women, for marginalized communities, for men, for anybody who's trying to do anything in any sector. So I think entrepreneurship has, in fact, it defines who we are as Americans. The first entrepreneurs jumped on a ship and crossed the pond and landed on that coast, the East Coast, and basically settled here in the United States and then migrated west. We're entrepreneurs by nature of who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I talked about kind of the spirit behind them. And I've always thought entrepreneurs are the ones creating jobs. They're the
Oh,
ones allowing other
yeah.
people to self-actualize. They're the
Oh,
ones giving a vehicle and a pathway for folks to support their families. So it's a
absolutely.
wonderful spirit that you've tapped into.
Totally. All of us who support entrepreneurs, and I neglected to say all the positive impacts that it has on society as a whole. Real estate market, academics, patents, service providers, consultants, everyone who basically helps support the entrepreneur's journey, there's a ripple effect that comes from their success. So we need to do more of that.
Sure. So, in talking before our call today, found out that other than a brief stint as a child in the Midwest, so you know a little bit about winters, but just a little bit,
Just
uh,
a little bit.
just a little bit. You've spent the bulk of your life in the Bay Area growing up, and then now as an adult. Um, and obviously, a lot of your investing is around there. But when you think of it from kind of an entrepreneur and investing standpoint, what do you see as the differences between the coasts in the Midwest?
So I want to clarify one thing though. I do have investments outside of California.
Okay.
So I have Florida. I've got Maryland. There's a lot of amazing and I travel. I used to travel quite a bit across the country, discovering these different areas across the country. And I have to tell you, the consistent thing is about people, people supporting entrepreneurs, people on the teams, the grit that comes with them. Entrepreneurship as a vehicle to introducing products and opportunities into the marketplace are pretty consistent, whether it's East Coast, West Coast, Mid Coast, it doesn't matter. I think one of the big differences, though, is in the Midwest, for a lot of reasons, there is a different approach in terms of sustainability. So while in the past, and I'm going to say about 20 years ago, in the past, it was emphasized that companies should be sustainable in terms of revenue models. Something happened in the past 20 years where venture and private equity and others and said, they all said, put aside all your business books, put aside all the revenue models. We just want to see growth at any cost, and we'll keep funneling it that way. I think what's remained pretty solid, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, from what I've seen from my friends in the Midwest, is there is a greater emphasis on sustainability and on growth, and doing it through revenue models that actually succeed.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic, one we probably could spend a bunch of time on, but just at a high level, I think there's a little bit of people being more concerned about failure here. And so diving in and digging in and leaning in and just trying to go no matter what it takes to make it work. And
Yeah.
maybe that's a strength, maybe that's a weakness. I'm not sure, but definitely we do lean in and spend a lot of the time and capital and energy we have on these companies here in the Midwest.
I think it makes a lot of sense. You got to plan, right? We used to always say if you don't make a plan, you have a plan, then you'll end up failing, right? You have to have a plan. And so a lot of times I think what's happened, and I'm going to say this for venture industry over the past 20 years, they have essentially promoted growth at any cost. And so entrepreneurs who migrate to the West or the East Coast basically are pursuing investors who want that type of growth at any cost. And I don't know that that is really the best way to do it. There have been lots of good examples of success, but let's not look at unicorns as success. Unicorns are potential value that the person who invested decides is going to be the value of the company, right? What really matters is at the end of the day, whether you get an exit from being acquired, or you happen to show that the public markets really value what you want, and then they show it to you in your stock price. But the rest of it, in terms of unicorn at any cost, really is as figmenty as a unicorn is.
Yeah,
If that's a word.
yes, it is. You just made
Yeah.
it up.
Right.
And then I also think there's probably a little bit more of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, a scarlet letter for failure in the Midwest, as opposed to maybe a learning experience and a badge of courage. And so there might be also a little bit of hesitancy to take that big leap here in the Midwest as compared to the two coasts, which why don't you comment on that, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Midwest angel investors.
Totally. So yeah, look, failure is not a permanent fixture, as you mentioned the Scarlet A would be, right? Failure is an opportunity to learn. Now, nobody likes to fail, but the reality is, when I see a entrepreneur who has never tasted failure, when I meet an investor who has never had a non-success in their portfolio, I know that there's still a lot of room for growth. And clearly, people learn huge lessons from it. So as long as it becomes part of the fabric of your being and you learn from it and it doesn't hold you back, it should not hold you back. You get back up on the horse, you find another way to get what you need to get done. Now, what I also notice is that a lot of folks hold on to ideas far longer than they probably should. A lot of people come up with ideas that probably should never have been started to begin with. And that's where folks like you and I, with gray hair or no hair, basically help. If they ask for help, we say, look, we don't need an automated blender with AI and ML that tells you when your blending is done. It's not a necessity.
Absolutely. So a reminder for everybody that you can ask questions of Faz, just put them in the comments field. Also a reminder to hit the subscribe and like button. And again, that will allow us to let you know when we are going live with future sessions. And so Faz, I teased it a little bit. I want to dig into the Midwestern angel community. How can angel investors in the Midwest get involved with others outside of the region, and then maybe dip into a little bit of kind of the pros and cons of investing outside your backyard? You mentioned that you're in a bunch of deals all around the
Yeah.
country.
Sure, sure. And it's really as simple as what you and I did early on, which is we picked up the phone and called one another and we discussed, what's your investment thesis, what's your agenda, and just getting to know one another. And I know from all of my friends in the Midwest, I know that that is genuinely what draws all of you together, whether it's through Club E or Network Connect or any of the other groups that you belong to, Rick. It's all about building friendship, right? Building relationships, and then ultimately it leads to a point where you trust one another. So it has to start from someplace. And there are many ways of doing it. And again, Angel Capital Association might be just one of those resources. There are other associations in the European market. Believe it or not, in the time of COVID, everyone is opening their doors. So including some of the venture capitalists who are making it possible for angels and family offices to listen in, to participate. So I think the more we do that, the more collaborations will come about, the more opportunities for good deals. Look, I love good deals. I love a good valuation. I love a smart team with good IP around it. And I would love to know that, Rick, you're behind one of those deals, you're on the board, or you're an investor. I trust you. I would love to look at that deal, right? So that's really kind of how it starts. And the more we talk to one another, the more comfortable we feel. That's really the basis of it. It's simple as that.
So for these companies, just to give our audience a reference point, to these companies you mentioned, Florida, Maryland, a couple of other states, how
Mhm.
did those deals end up finding their way to you, or vice versa? How did you find them?
So it's fascinating. I used to travel a lot, and I went to I went to my first Maryland conference, and I said the same thing. By the way, the host of that conference was someone just like you, Rich Bendis, who runs BioHealth Capital Region. He put me on his podcast, and we were talking about deals, just like the way you and I are talking right now. And I said, I'd love to find these great deals in Maryland, but I'd like to find them through friends. And then right after the show, he introduced me to one, and I ended up investing because I knew Rich, and I knew his background, and I knew I was in the right milieu of these types of deals. And so that's how one of them happened. The others is I like to give to the community that I belong to, which is the United States of America, which is the global community of entrepreneurs. And the more opportunities there are to speak to people about healthcare, life sciences, human and animal health, the more people understand that I'm amenable to that. And I also, it's not always about me. I know a lot of people, and I'm more than happy to refer a deal to another group or to another person that would be a better match. So at the end of the day, it's more about talking and getting to know people. And then eventually what happens is people do find you. The entrepreneurs talk to one another, Rich. Rick, I'm sorry. I was talking about Rich Bendis, but the entrepreneurs talk to one another. And then they also let others know where the investors are and who's friendly and who's not.
All right. Well, I'm going to assume you're going to get some calls from this event here today, and or I will
That's
refer
fine.
on some things. So thanks
Sure.
for putting
Absolutely.
out the welcome mat for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So if we shift gears from individual investors to companies, talk a little bit about how Midwestern companies can get involved with other companies and maybe find other investors. You touch on a little bit outside the region.
Yeah, so that one is a little bit of a nuance, right? Because the relationships, the trust that builds between investors, a lot of times is where the deal flow really does start. So again, you'll see 1,000 deals in a year. You'll probably invest in about 10, or your groups will. Um, it's hard to manage time when there's 10,000 entrepreneurs chasing after one investor. It is much easier to manage time when your friends are able to then refer deals that have already been pre-vetted. I already mentioned I spend at least 90% of my time teaching and mentoring. These are 30-minute, an hour conversations that I have where I end up basically saying, it's not a right deal for me, but can I give you some advice? And that's how it ends up, right? So if I do make an investment in an entire year or 2 or 3 investments, I have to manage my time carefully. So my suggestion is the best way for entrepreneurs to go about reaching out to other investors outside of their milieu is to find those friendly investors or advisors or board members who then can at least make some warm intros, right? So that by itself conserves a lot of time. Otherwise, everyone is super busy. We were just talking about our weekends earlier, right? And I think you asked me, how's your weekend, Foz? I go, I'm not sure I had one. I was busy trying to help my entrepreneurs get ready for a prize or an event or whatever it is. So yeah, anything that you can do to show some empathy or compassion for the other side. And tenacity is always great. I've had entrepreneurs chase after me for months, but Rick, I'm not the only investor. You don't need to chase after just me for months, but ideally a highly vetted friend, somebody that I know already made an investment. That's probably the most efficient way.
Okay, great. And with all these different components of your life, all these different companies, all these different groups, different parts of the country, and then just having a personal interest in human health and animal health, you see a
Mhm.
lot of things. What do
Yeah.
you think is the most interesting innovation that you're currently seeing on the human health side?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I could go on and on, but obviously the Nobel Prize in CRISPR, right? CRISPR being able to actually modify genes that are not beneficial to our health and well-being, but actually do cause disease, and being able to give people a normal gene back. And I'm not talking about any of the cosmetic issues that some people may be dealing with. I'm talking about real life and death genes that people have to live with. So on that level, there are amazing discoveries being made in our laboratories across the country, in our academic centers. Some of them ready for prime time. So there are companies now based on CRISPR that are working on these types of solutions. Some of them may be 5, 10 years down the road. Some may be even sooner, who knows? But the major areas of healthcare for humans that I'm seeing a lot of interest in is really focused on general health and well-being, how to stay well, especially in times of stress like this. So there are numerous now applications for mental health and well-being. There are numerous applications for the women in our lives. So women manifest health disorders in slightly nuanced ways that are just different than men. And most of the studies that have been done lately on research programs, clinical trials, are mostly on men. So I would say that there are a lot of advancements being made on many fronts. And particularly, I'm very keen on what's happening with women's health and wellness. And obviously, I love the furry animals. Where is he, the one that's swimming out here?
Yeah, and that was where I was going to go with the next question. You both personally and professionally are
Yeah,
interested in the animal
yeah,
world.
yeah.
Tell us about some of the interesting innovations that you're currently seeing in animal health.
Yeah, so that is mushrooming like crazy too. And again, in time of COVID, what we've seen is shelters have a low supply of animals for adoption, which is great. And most of the benefits that we all reap from our animals is based on it's on love, it's on exercise, it's on what's good for. If I feed Fido all that good food, then maybe I should also be thinking about putting good food into my own body. So there's a lot of really healthy ramifications there. I see animal health, pet health, as a pathway into the human mindset and into the human health world, because animals frankly cannot take themselves into the veterinarian to be taken care of. So tele everything for human side is also being applied now to tele-veterinary care. Great applications there. There are new drugs that are being developed. There's a greater push away from antibiotics, which is affecting microbiomes like crazy. And remember, everything you put into your body or to your animal's body at some point ends up into the oceans somehow. So all of those things that tie into humans and the animal and the environment. It's going to sound, I'm sounding very West Coasty, aren't I? But anything that ties into, just helping us all stay healthy, including our environment, I think are wonderful areas to invest in.
Okay. And then a reminder to everybody, you can ask questions of Faz. Just put your question in the comments field. Similarly, hit that subscribe and like button. I have a question from Jim here. For 2020, interesting one, for 2020 babies, what do you think the life expectancy will be in the United States?
You know, I really think we are truly blessed with all of the amazing things that we have in the United States. And while there may be ups and downs in terms of life expectancy, I think we have a greater appreciation and understanding of what health means to us because of the time that we're going through. Who would have ever thought, Rick, during our time growing up, that we would be the generation that goes through a pandemic? But here we are, people are having babies and they're going to grow through this pandemic. And yes, we're going to remember it, but there's a greater emphasis now on health and well-being, right? And we now understand what our immune system does for us on a daily basis. We now know what stress means. So we're going through an amazing time. My sense is, and I wish I had a crystal ball, but my sense is based on all the learnings that we have in front of us and based on all of the positive things people are doing to promote health and well-being, my sense is the lifespan of this generation being born now will probably surpass the one prior.
Makes sense. So
Yeah.
you hit on an item there, crystal ball. That's a question that I like to utilize a lot. So if you did have a crystal ball, I know you said you didn't, but if
Yeah.
you had one, what are some of the other things that you see happening in the future as it relates to human and animal health?
You know, there's a number of areas that I think are advancing very, very nicely. I do think we're getting a greater appreciation for input and output. So this is one giant tube from in to out. And I think we are getting a better understanding of how food is actually a medicine of sorts, right? So the better quality foods that we put into our body have a positive effect on our psyche, on our mental health, on our physical health. So I think what we're going to see, if anything, that will be very, very impactful is focus on food, agriculture. How does agriculture and ag tech integrate back into food supply, high quality food supply that leads into good, consumption, breakfast, lunch, dinner, otherwise, and how does that essentially lead to measurable outcomes in terms of health metrics, right? So you lose weight, great. You live longer, wonderful. You have less chronic issues in your life. And remember, the immune system is the key component between the brain and the heart. The immune system then kind of ties it all together. And I think we're going to have greater appreciations for what all that means without having to really have outlandish technology that controls our lives. It's very simple: input, output.
Yeah.
Measure what goes in, measure what comes out, and then what happens in between is a positive effect.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've talked about smart foods a couple of
Yeah,
times at Club
sure,
E.
sure,
MyFormulary.com has spoken a couple of different times over the last couple of years. So I totally agree with you on that front. Uh,
sure.
Flip side of the crystal ball and what do you think is going to happen in the future? Kind of more of a rear view mirror question,
Mm,
talking about learning from deals that went south. And I'll
yeah.
just put out for me, sometimes it's stuff you can't control, like timing. You're just too early.
Yeah.
The themes might be the right themes that you're backing, but you're just ahead of the curve.
Mhm.
Another thing, using the old Joffrey Moore Crossing the Chasm book about having a beachhead. Been in a couple of deals where we were trying to do too many things
Mhm.
and not focused on knocking down a beachhead and expanding from there. And a couple of things that come to mind for deals that haven't worked for me. But as
Mhm.
you look in your rear view mirror for deals that didn't work, what
Mhm.
comes to mind?
I am going to categorize this into one bucket. Um, people, people and decision making that comes with people, right? So whether it's the CEO or the management team or the board of directors, someone made an extraordinarily bad decision at some point in time. And I know that sounds very generic, but I'll give one very good example. And we're talking about investors and angel investing. So all money is not the same. All money is not helpful. So when you take on an investor and you add them to your cap table, that cap table includes the story that that investor brings with them. So if that investor comes in with an agenda and it may not be aligned with the other investors, you have a great, and I've seen this happen more than once, you bring on a venture capitalist or a private equity person or a retired former corporate person, and they're not helpful, but they actually force the company into a bad direction. It's people. That's why we always start with those parameters, right? Who are you? Who else do you bring to the table? Who's on your board? Who are the existing investors? Show me your cap table, as my friend Ziad likes to say. Show me your cap table and I'll show you who you are. So to me, fundamentally, it comes down to, do I believe in the person or persons leading this venture? Do I believe they can make good hires? Can they hire the right corporate counsel, hire the right IP counsel, bring on, and remember, when you bring on investors, you're hiring investors. I mean, it sounds silly to say that, but you're bringing people onto your cap table. So that's, to me, fundamentally, that's probably where the majority of the rear view learnings have come from.
Okay. Another good point. Another question about the audience, about valuations. We'd
Mhm.
like to think that here in the Midwest, you get a little better value for your dollar,
Mhm.
just like if you were to buy a house in Minneapolis versus San Francisco.
True.
What's your experience been regarding valuations and deal structure and terms when you compare, say, the coast with the Midwest?
Yeah, so there is definitely a difference between the coasts, Midwest, East Coast, West Coast. So valuations are driven by individual investors, by the markets, right? It doesn't mean that a company is worth less than another company doing the exact same thing on the East Coast. That's not what it means. It's perception. And at the end of the day, what really matters most is you have product market fit, you have a business model and a revenue model that can engage. The gears are all engaging, right? And you're able to throw off contracts and capital that leads you to a pathway to profitability. That's what a business is. Business is designed to generate cash flow, and cash flow means ultimately you get to profitability. And my sense is the company that can survive a COVID downturn without an infusion of capital, the one that can sustain itself based on its revenue and its good gracious, graces with its customers who love its product, that's the winner. That's the one that always wins, that outlasts everyone else. So valuations are just one parameter. And by the way, good deals will find good investors, whether it's within the region or outside. My sense is this, and I'm already doing the experiment with several of my companies, a distributed cap table where you bring in investors locally and you also bring in investors from all around the country. A distributed cap table brings you lots of cheerleaders, people who want to support you from all areas. And then once you win, you now have fans all across the country. So I'm all about bringing as many investors, good ones, as possible. But I'm also really finding that the experiment with distributed cap tables works very nicely.
Yeah, assuming that they're the right investors per your earlier
To,
comment of
to,
the stories
to
you bring in. Yeah.
trusted network. So it's got to be a trusted network.
Yeah. So speaking of COVID, a couple times people have asked me, "Hey, how did that change any criteria I have for companies I get involved in or invest in?" And I think it exposed customer concentration as
Yeah,
a major issue. It exposed supply chains, and
yeah.
then the word I'm using is almost a very California term, kind of Zen. Some people were able to kind of ride it out with
Yeah.
a more calm demeanor, and then other people went into hyperdrive on their anxiety. So,
Mm.
as you think about COVID, how has it shaped or reshaped your investment philosophy and thesis?
So, COVID to me has accelerated a lot of my investment thesis. So I've always believed in tele everything, but the market wasn't pulling on us before. And now healthcare markets, hospital systems that were left behind or chose to remain behind are now following a pathway of incorporating this into their offering to their customers because people want comfort. They want to be able to do things from home, including for their animals as well. So I think COVID, as far as my investment thesis, COVID has definitely shifted a lot of mindsets towards sustainable business models and pathway to a reasonable revenue stream rather than continuous growth. So now here's what's also happened with COVID, and maybe it was already planned before COVID. There are numerous mega funds that have opened up, $300 million funds, $1 billion funds, some of them healthcare, some of them other places. Here's the reality though, Rick. Those funds, in order for them to be successful, meaning that they get back 3x return on the fund size, to be successful, every single deal that they bring in has to basically return exactly the amount that they raised all across their portfolio. They can't have one failure. Every single one of them has to basically bring back that, or they have to have several unicorns and everything else fails. So the majority with their Moneyball approach take the 90% will fail, 10% will be unicorns, and then I'll get my 3x. The problem is for you and I as investors, in order to rely on their investment thesis, that means every one of our deals has to be an exit value of 300 million too. I'm not interested in those types
Yeah.
of companies. I'm interested in helping entrepreneurs succeed in a timely manner based on their goals. If their goal is to be a unicorn, they chase after those venture capitalists. If their goal is to return to investors a reasonable return and to grow a company, then I'm the right place. So basically what it means is we all have to collaborate as angels, family offices, collaborate, be collegial, find syndication opportunities to share deals, good deals, and then promote those forward to the acquirers who want to acquire reasonably priced companies. That's my investment thesis for this time period we're in.
Okay. And we had a longtime listener, Eric M. Eric, you know who you are. Thanks for your ongoing support. Appreciate it very much. He asked a question that I kind of asked just right ahead of getting this about changing your types of investments regarding COVID, but
Mhm,
I'll take a component of his question. How
mhm.
have you personally changed your time or reallocated how you spend time during COVID?
Oh my God. I keep asking people, are you busier than you've ever been before? And the reality is I'm actually quite busy. In the past, I used to have breaks with travel and commute time and everything to get, one thought to another. But now I'm actually struggling with my calendar, and it's partly me, right? But it's easy to do a Zoom session. It doesn't matter what time zone you're in. Um, so it's easy to have conversations. It's easy to get to know people. I would say that right now in this era of COVID, it's harder though to build that bond, that connection point between myself and the entrepreneurs specifically, because there was a lot of things that I always looked for when I met with somebody for coffee, or I met with them in their backyard and we had a drink or two together. There were always some things that were subtle that I can't pick up on anymore. So now I have to build new skill sets, and that means I need to have another set of trusted eyes to help me. So I'll call up Rick and I'll say, "Hey Rick, I just met with so and so. I've never met them in person. Can you tell me more?" Um, so that's really, we all have to change the way that we approach work, how we schedule things, how we allocate resources. But we're also going to have to get used to the idea of not meeting one another in order to do business.
Yep, absolutely. That part has been shocking to me because thought so many things had to be done face to face in
Yeah.
person.
Mm.
And, a few things, as I mentioned, I actually went to a live wedding over the weekend. So there are some things that might be a little
Yeah.
more enjoyable in person, but nonetheless,
True.
that's been shocking to me.
True.
Hey, Faz, it's been great today. I have a couple more questions. And then I also, just to let
Sure.
you know, I've already got a deal for you, an animal
Okay.
health thing that when we
Excellent.
finished up here, I'll talk to you about. All right.
All right.
So one of the last couple of questions, in terms of our conversation today, what would a main call to action be for all the business leaders that are out there listening to us?
Talk to one another, communicate, just start a 15-20 minute conversation and figure out what people are all about, what they're trying to chase after. How do you collaborate? How do you collaborate through this thing called Zoom or Microsoft Team or whatever you use? It doesn't matter. Just find a way to collaborate. And again, it could be as simple as what you just said. Hey, Foz, I got a deal for you. You want to take a look at it? And I'll take a look at it and I'll give feedback. Just start the conversation.
All right, great. Hey, as you kind of reflect or think through the different items that we've talked about today, if there was one key takeaway that you'd want the audience to take with it, what would it be? Maybe it's something you've already said you want to reiterate, or maybe it's something we didn't get to.
Yeah, none of what we talked about today is rocket science. None of it is mysterious. If you have a question about something, the 5 most important words in life that make up a sentence are, can you please help me? So if you need help understanding what this pathway of entrepreneurship is all about, it's not a mystery. Rick, you're there. I'm here. There's a bunch of people around who can explain what this is about. So don't sit there wondering, oh, I wish I could. I wish I could. Pick up a book, read it, ask questions, and then learn more. That's my take-home message to everybody who's on this call.
All right. So for the folks that are out there, whether you're listening to us live today or you're picking us up later on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform, if you want to reach out to Faz, you can get out to him through me, or if you're here live today, hit our comments field and we will make sure that you can find Faz in the right and short amount of time. All right. So Faz, thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you
Pleasure.
for your insights. Hope you'll come back sometime.
I'd love to. Thank you for having me, Rick.
All right. Again, thank you very much. And we look forward to talking to you again.